Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hammer Podcast. Today is, I believe, the 25th, right? 26th of
26.
January, 2023. We are speaking with Dee and Jen. You guys went to the Family Foundation School, both of
Yeah.
you? Okay.
Yes.
All right. What year was that?
I got there in October of 1995 and was there until June of 1998.
Okay. What about you, Dee?
I got there January of 96 and I left when I graduated August of 97.
Oh, okay. Don't forget, everybody that's they'll be watching this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give us some comments. Let us know how we're doing, like the video and all that good stuff. So go ahead, ladies. Wherever you want to start. If you want to start from the beginning, give us your. You said you had an alternate viewpoint. Go ahead. It's all yours.
You starting?
No, you are. You were there.
Oh.
Long.
Well, why did you go there to start with? Jen?
Why did my parents send me there? Let's see. All right. So I was a really rebellious kid. I got expelled from 2 different high schools. I was doing a lot of drugs, having a lot of sex, not following any rules, getting in fights with my parents, getting in fights with other kids, running with gangs. I mean, I was doing all of it. And my parents were terrified. They didn't know what to do. They had, I came from a middle-class family. The expectation was, that I would graduate high school, go to college, make something of myself. My brother, who was 10 years older than me, he was considered the bad kid. And like the worst he ever did was, stay out past curfew. So like, I was like, hold my beer. My parents really didn't know what to do. And it ultimately, the last meeting that we had with the dean at my high school, right? I was at the top high school in New York, right? I was a really smart kid. I could go really far in life theoretically if I would just do what I was supposed to do. And
Apply
so,
yourself, yeah.
right. So, here I was in this meeting, like the umpteenth meeting with the dean and the school guidance counselor and my parents. And my parents said I remember clearly, my parents said to the school guidance counselor and the dean, she has this ridiculous idea that she's going to get herself an apartment in Alphabet City and get a job as a telemarketer and drop out of high school. And the guidance counselor looked at my father and said, that sounds like a good plan. And my father said, oh shit, we got to get her out of here. And the next day, my parents made a deal with me that I no longer had to go to school, but that they didn't want to get in trouble for truancy, so I had to leave the house every morning. So the deal was you leave at 8 a.m. like you're going to school, and we don't really care what you do. Just get out of the house, and you can't come home until after school would be over, and do what you want to do. And I was like, yes, they finally come around. They get it. I have the coolest parents ever. And then a week later, they called me and said, well, I guess back then, right? They paged me and I called them back. and they said, your brother has a brain tumor and we need to go visit him. And my brother at the time lived in Canada. And my parents said, come home, pack a bag. You don't even have to stay here for the night. Just pack your bag. We'll pick you up in the morning and we'll go. And I said, fine. I came home. I packed my bag. There was a note, and I want to say it was like $180, and a note that said, have fun tonight. And I did just that. I went out with a bang. And the next morning, my parents picked me up. They were not stupid. I got in the car and crashed from whatever I had done the night before. And I woke up at the Family Foundation School with 3 girls pulling me out of my car. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And yeah, and that was the start of my 3 years at the family. So that answers your question of why did I go and how did I?
Yeah.
How about you, Dee?
So I went when I was 17. I had gotten in trouble all through my juvenile years. I had been in juvenile detention. I grew up in New Jersey, and in the 90s, that was just wild. I got sent to rehab. I wasn't using drugs, but nobody believed me because I was in so much trouble so young. So they sent me away to a rehab in Pennsylvania, and I just kind of had to go with that from there. I've been sent away to psychiatric centers. The family was my 4th placement. And actually I got sent there. I was in a juvenile, youth facility, and I got into a fight, and a riot started, and they got me for inciting a riot. And I had a 4-year suspended sentence to prison from assault on a police officer earlier on when they were trying to arrest my friend when I was 14. So the judge told me that, they were going to send me to prison for 4 years to serve my sentence since I got in trouble again. And my mom had been talking about me going to the family since I was about 14 or 15. She even gave me the handbook when I was 14 and 15, asked me if I wanted to go. And I said, hell no. We didn't have the money, so, I wasn't worried about it. But the judge, since I was only 17, they did decide that they would send me there, and they mandated me. So I got sent to the family, and I wasn't allowed to leave until I completed the program. So when I got to the family, I was 17, and I didn't leave till I was 19, even though when you're 18, you're allowed to walk down the road, but I couldn't. So I was one of the older ones there and stuck there because I didn't have that choice. Most 18-year-olds, they got their cup of coffee and walked on down that road.
Well, it was mandated by the court, so you had no choice.
Yeah, I was mandated till I completed the program, and they didn't really say what the end of the program was. But after I got there, it kind of came down to if I graduated and went to college, they would consider that completing the program.
Oh.
Which for that, that was not even going to be an option for me. So, at that time, I had been kicked out of 5 high schools in New Jersey. I had been in trouble. I had been in alternative school. So trying to graduate high school was something I didn't even think I could be able to do. But yeah, that's how I ended up at the family. And I got there, like I said, in January of 96. So Jen had been there a couple months before me.
So you two bonded there, basically?
Yeah.
As much as you could.
No, I think that's part of what we meant by the alternative view. I'm not one who's going to stand here and say the family school saved my life. I don't know. I think that there are aspects of it that probably helped in that, it was pretty much impossible for me to get into the kind of trouble I was getting into as long as I was there, right? I could not really possibly do drugs, I guess I could have had sex, but it would have been really hard. I tried. I could not do it was impossible. And that was part of the point, right? My parents' point was get her out of this environment, get her to a place where she can't do this.
Right.
And to a certain extent, that worked, right? For me, a lot of it was being a stupid kid, right? I don't think ultimately looking back on it that I was a drug addict, right? I haven't used drugs in I don't know, probably 20 something years. And not because I'm in any kind of program, just because like I grew out of it. Right. And like, it's
Sure.
not interesting to me anymore. So like, I think a lot of it was for me, I was a stupid kid. I wanted attention. I wanted, to have fun. I wanted to do all these things. And as I got older, even while there, because my first couple of years there were crazy, right? Where, like I said, I was trying to have sex, right? I was trying to start fights. I was like trying to get attention. And as I got older and realized I don't need to do that anymore, my stay got easier. um, and I don't know that I credit the family for that. Like, I don't know that they did something that particularly made that happen for me, other than it gave me the ability to get older. Uh,
It's called growing up.
right. Like I grew up, right.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't think that it saved my life, but I do think that it wasn't all terrible. Like, there were some bad parts, don't get me wrong, but I also made like lifelong friendships. Like, Dee and I talk, I don't know, at least once a week, and have for 25 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've got a few other girlfriends that are my friends from when I was at the family that like we're close, like we're sisters. We've lived our whole lives together. I get the impression from a lot of the people who come on your podcast, other people's podcasts, like it's all bad. They don't remember anything good. Like, I remember the fun times. Like, we still joke about like, remember that time when, whatever, we I don't know. Remember, Dorothy, when we used to we used to make the cakes in the kitchen on Friday and Saturday nights. And like, there were 3 or 4 of us girls that would spend the night in the kitchen, not overnight, like the evening in the kitchen making cakes, fooling around and joking and having fun. And those times, like, they were fun times. It wasn't all horrible. It wasn't like just nonstop, I'm being tortured. And I feel like that's the part that kind of gets left out of the story a little bit, is like, I think once you get past the trauma of it, and I was lucky enough that like I got past that trauma very early on, and I understand why not everyone can. Um, Although some of that I think is self-imposed for people. I think there are some people that don't want to get past the trauma of it. I think that they get some self-worth out of being able to tell this story and being able to say how traumatized they are.
Sure.
I think other people like legitimately can't get past some of the trauma, but I think some people just kind of enjoy it. But I think once you get past the trauma, like now, when I think about the family, like I only think about the good times. I only remember the fun. It is not a daily barrage in my mind of like all the misery I went through. And trust me, I went through a lot. Like, I was wrapped in a blanket more times than I can count. I was put in the corner more times than I can count. I was on, what was that thing called? The work sanction. Yeah, I was on a work sanction for 6 months. Like, I went through all of it. I had table topics where every staff member told me I was a whore, and that I was, oh, what did they call me, Dee? A black widow, that I was going to fuck all the guys there and then kill them. That's what they said I would do. Like, I went through all of it. They definitely did a very good job of tearing us all down and then forgot to build us all back up. Like, it was bad, but there were so many fun and good times too. And like, nobody remembers that.
Well, everybody's built differently as far as their mindset.
Yeah.
Some people are really strong mentally, and some are not.
Agreed.
So, yeah. Dee, we can't hear you, Dee.
Nope. We can't
Nope.
hear you at all.
We can't hear you. at all.
Nope.
You,
Try now. No, now you're muted. Nope. All right, so now this just became the Jen show.
go ahead. Go ahead and close that out and come back in. That's what happened with Jen. So she'll close out, come back in. That's fine. So go ahead. But like I was saying, it's a mindset. Some people like you get over it, real quickly, and some people it consumes them. Uh-huh.
Kind of graduated around the same time frame.
Okay.
And kind of like met up with each other constantly. And we kind of looked, I mean, Jen lived with a couple of people from the family for a while. So it wasn't instant or anything like that. It wasn't, came home and I mean, I went to college and I failed out my freshman. I didn't even know how to go to the cafeteria. I didn't know how to do anything because I graduated and then 2 days later I'm in a college dorm. And I came from the family. And before that, I had been in so many other places. I was institutionalized. So I don't think it's saying like, oh, it's easy to get over. I think it's just, a lot of people like pushed it away and said they're not going to talk about the family or deal with the family. And now they're, older. And it's like now they're trying to deal with it. And it's like, we kind of did that when we got out. We all got kind of like talked to each other, dealt with it through each other. We went through the bullshit. We had a lot of problems. Nothing was easy, but it wasn't like the family did all that. I think it was the fact that we weren't able to grow up the way people grow up. Like we weren't allowed to have responsibility until all of a sudden we had all the responsibility. Now we're in college. I don't even know how to order books. I don't even know how to, do any of this stuff. And it went from having everything done for me and being told what to do to now it's on you. And, nothing made sense. And I mean, like I said, I wasn't a drug addict or alcoholic, and people would say, do you want to go drink or smoke? And I'd be like, oh, no. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And they'd walk away from me. It was like, I was in my own little like world, but I found solace in my friends from the family. And I mean, we've definitely had our hard times and things weren't all great. And I'll say, my stay at the family, I had a pretty easy stay. I got there. I was older. I already kind of knew the game because I had been in plenty of treatments before. I came in handcuffs and shackles. So it was definitely a different entrance than a lot of other people because I knew where I was coming. A lot of other people just woke up and were there, or they were, brought in by transport. I knew where I was going.
Or they were pulled out of the car.
Yeah, like Jen. I mean, the girls that pulled me out will never forget it. They have scars from it.
She didn't tell you there's a staff member who has her exact dental imprint inside of his chest because of that. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't all, nice and fun. I mean, we heard about that story for years. And it was something, it wasn't something like that wasn't abnormal when we heard about it. So we all were just like, oh, okay, that's the next person that came in. So I could see how that's like completely traumatizing, like all of a sudden. And like I said, I was sent by the courts. So the one thing the family would love to do is try to alienate you from your family and say, well, your family sent you here because they don't want you. I'm like, I mean, I got sent by the courts. So, and they indoctrinate your family before they even get to see you. They already tell them, they have a meeting with them and they have a retreat where they tell them, look, your kids are going to tell you that we wrap them in blankets and we do this and we do that. And that's the way they're going to manipulate you. So when they say that to you, they think you're stupid and they think they can manipulate you. So then when you say that to them, they say, oh, you think I'm stupid. You think you can manipulate me. So they play you against each other. And, so like growing up, you kind of lose that aspect of trusting an adult or trusting in people, even in each other. Jen couldn't tell me a lot of what she was doing because I would get in trouble for knowing. And then when she decided to get honest one day, I'd get in trouble. So we didn't have like that trust with each other, even because the whole game was who could tell on each other first so that I don't get in trouble. Like if I get honest, I don't get in trouble, but you will because I'm getting honest about something I did with you.
What was that called?
Negative contract.
So, something table, right? Table something.
Yeah,
Table topic.
yeah,
Table topic.
Yeah,
Okay.
table topics, and that's where you had like I would if Jen was doing something and I knew she was doing something like writing letter to a boy and I knew about it, she could come into the family, have a table topic, and say, "Hey, I want to break a negative contract." Now I got to stand up, and now she stands up and says her part of it, and that I knew about it all along. And she doesn't want to do negative stuff with me anymore, and she doesn't want to be that person anymore.
I don't think I ever did that.
Yeah, you did that. Yes.
Was it mainly a survival tactic?
Yeah.
Doing that? Okay.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, look, I think very few people, Dorothy would say she's one of them, got through that whole place without ever buying into any of it. But I think the rest of us, like, it ebbed and flowed, right? Like there were days when you were like, this is all bullshit. And other days where you were like, oh shit, maybe I really need to follow these rules. Maybe this really is going to make me feel better. Maybe this is going to, get me better things. And it wasn't all like survival, like I just need to make it through this place. Some of it really was like, oh, I think maybe this is the way I'm supposed to live. And some of it was, just nonsense, right? Like some of it was clearly like, I know the words that I have to say to get out of this with as little trouble as possible.
Yeah.
I was very bad at that. I always have been. I still am. Like, I'm just not good at bullshitting. And so like I would get up there and I would know. And the staff knew I knew. They would say, you know what you're supposed to say. And I would go, yeah, not going to do it.
Jen, you would make a horrible politician.
Yes, I know.
Well, her chosen profession is crazy because
I am a licensed and practicing criminal defense attorney.
Really?
I bullshit for a living.
yeah.
Oh. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think the other thing about the family, like for me, was I was one of the ones that was called to wrap up the girls, that was called to chase a lot. I mean, Jen, as she got older, she was, but I was 17 when I got there. I turned 18 within a couple months. So I left when I was 19. So when there was girls to be wrapped up or restrained, they called me. And I mean, I feel bad about being the person in someone's story that they hated or, felt like abused them. And I definitely did it because I didn't want to be the one getting wrapped up and I didn't want to be the one getting put in the corner. And, but there were times that, I mean, as a 17-year-old girl that's frustrated and in this school, I might've hit somebody's head against the wall a little bit harder than needed to be. But, and that's my that was where my real problem came as I got older, is why couldn't I have stood up? Because I had been to, like I said, juvenile detention. Like the family wasn't scary to me. I was like, oh, it's whatever. I just have to play the game to get out. But the fact that I couldn't stand up enough to say something like, this isn't okay, or we're not going to do this, even though I knew the whole time, there was not one time I ever bought into anything they said to me. There wasn't one time I thought that was the way I should live my life or that was what I should do. So it was like I played the game, but did I play along too well? I wouldn't say I was strict or I was like yelling at the girls much, but that was never my thing. I didn't bring up a lot of people. I just kind of I knew what staff members to befriend so that I could kind of walk that little tightrope without getting too called out.
You played the game. You played the game.
I did. I played the game, and sometimes I feel guilty about it that I played the game, so well that I didn't. I mean, I wrapped people up, but I got put in the corner one time, and I got stood up probably 10 times the whole time I was there.
I probably of them were because of me.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure like 5 of them were because of Jen.
Oh, Jen, the troublemaker.
Well, see, part of it was I was young. I was 15 when I got there, and I figured out very quickly, probably within my first 2 months, because what happens is when you get there, everyone tells you the average stay is 18 months. And it gives you this idea that if I do what I need to do, I'm getting out of here in 18 months. But I figured out very quickly because I manipulated people to get my way, and I got a phone call with my parents in the first week. And in the first week, my father flat out told me, you will not get out of there until you graduate high school. Period. We don't care what you do. You're not getting out of there until you graduate. And so I knew it doesn't matter if I play the game. I'm not getting out of here until I graduate. So let's have fun. Like, you know, I don't have to play the game because there's no end goal for me, right? Doing what I'm supposed to do isn't going to get me out of here faster. It's not going to get me some special privileges. It's not going to get me anything. So I might as well do whatever I want, and I'm going to get out the same time. The other thing I figured out very quick was that
that sounds like Dee.
yeah, I think back, right?
Yep. I have no idea what that is.
Hey, if you mute, let's see what happens.
Yep, that's her.
Yep. It's you. You got to sign back out and come back in again.
All right.
So the other thing I figured out very quickly was it's not just that I'm not getting out of here until I graduate, but also my parents' main #1 goal is me graduating high school. And no matter what, when I graduate high school, I am done here. It doesn't matter what other parts of my life are still fucked up. If I graduate high school, I'm done. And so once I figured that out, I knew that the only thing that mattered was school and everything else could go.
Right.
And school there for me was relatively easy. So much so that at one point when they put me on work sanction, I got permission to call my parents. And I told my father, I said, they have me on work sanction and they haven't let me go to school in 3 weeks. And he called them and said, if you do not put her back in school, we will pull her out. The only reason we have her here is to go to school. So if she's not in school, we'll take her out. So at that point, they put me back in school, but literally any moment that I wasn't in class, I was to be on work sanction. Oh. And I said to them, what about, like, I have to do my homework, I need to study, like, what about study hall? And they said, let's be real, you don't need to study and you don't need to do your homework. And so they didn't. For the last 6 months that I was there, they did not let me go to study hall. They did not let me go do my homework. They didn't let me go to any other activities. I got to go to class and I got to go to work. And that was it. And I graduated. I literally got off. I was on so many different sanctions. I mean, I was on blackout with boys and blackout with 6 months and under. And
yes, thank you or something.
I was not on yes, thank you. I think I was on like, my name is Jen and I curse too much. My name is Jen and I'm a liar. My name is Jen and I flirt with all the boys, like some nonsense, right? Like all of these things.
Didn't you get put on property?
No, I was on a hair and makeup sanction. That was the beginning. But I was like on all of these sanctions and I was scheduled to graduate. And I said, I brought myself up and I said, I have been on all of these sanctions for 22 months. I am graduating in 1 week. I feel like before you let me graduate and walk across the stage, maybe you should let me off some of these sanctions so you can feel like, I don't know, you're graduating someone who's actually like finished your program. And they did. They let me off all the sanctions 1 week before I graduated.
Oh, nice. You know, and of course, doing that, when you're walking the aisle, you got a smile on your face, you know.
Well, it was better.
Happier than normal. Happier than
Well, we got to give speeches at our graduation. And we had to get the speeches pre-approved, and they did not approve my speech. And they made me rewrite it.
I
And then
wonder why.
And then I got up there and I gave my original speech anyway. They were not happy about.
Oh.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I came back for her speech. Like, it wasn't like, this horrible place that I couldn't even, like, I went back for her speech. I went back with one of the other students for New Year's. We spent New Year's there not because of the staff and not because we believed in the program, but because our friends were there. And we just wanted to maintain that relationship.
Sure.
That first year after I left, Dorothy left the year before, but the first year after I left, I went back, I don't know, 4 or 5 times just to visit people. I had friends who were working there. I had friends who were still like living there. There were staff members that I still liked and cared about. Like, it wasn't all horrible. Like, sure, to some extent we were brainwashed, right? And that's why we still went back.
We saw staff members abuse people. We saw people getting flown off balconies, and we saw that. Like, we're not saying we definitely saw that. Me and her together have seen that, and we saw a lot of the stuff that happened. And there are people who have legitimate issues with what happened there, and were treated absolutely horribly and inhumanely. And unfortunately, they grabbed us as kids and had us do the same thing, which is a big thing. But
right.
It's just like, I think a lot of the people that I hear have the problems are really the people that try to like push the family out of their mind, never want to deal with it, never want to talk to anybody, never want to do anything about it, and thought like everybody was like their enemy. And that's kind of what I hear when I hear people, saying, well, it was a torture chamber and it was this. And I'm like, I mean, I have pictures and we have smiles on our faces. Like, I have a picture of, Jen trying to put up the middle finger, and I'm trying to pull it down from her in the middle of study hall, because God knows that would have been a negative contract.
We're in all these like Facebook groups, right? And like, one of the things we always do is like, we tell war stories. Like, we talk about all the fun things we did, all the negative contracts we had, right? Like, all the things we didn't, that we weren't supposed to do. We put up pictures. Like, we've all got these pictures of us like doing dance contests and making cookies and running around, and like, all those things happened at the same time that many of us were being abused and traumatized, but like, both were happening simultaneously. And I think that's the part of the story that does get missed, is like, both happen simultaneously. I am not trying to take away from anyone who says I was traumatized, I was abused. That absolutely happened. Although we can debate whether like being forced to eat tuna fish is, trauma and torture, but like, there were absolute. I saw people who were treated terribly. I was treated terribly. I think that there was emotional abuse. I think in some cases there was physical abuse. I never personally witnessed or actually heard a firsthand account of any sexual abuse, but some people say that happened. But like, there was definitely abuse. For me, the thing that helped me move on is that I was luckier than most, and I got an apology very early on.
Yeah, you did.
Really?
In 2007. No, 6 or 7, because I remember where I lived at the time. It was either 6 or 7. They had like a reunion. It was actually the owner, Tony and Betty's, like 50th anniversary or something like that. And they threw a big party and they invited all the alumni.
Yes, they did.
And we all came. I flew up from Florida. Like, people came from everywhere. We all came. And it was the first time that we had all seen each other in years for some of us. And as part of this, they hired like a marketing PR firm.
Okay.
And they called all the alumni into this room with this PR person who like started this pitch, which was basically like, we're going to start an alumni group. What would you like to get out of that? What would you like to see? And everyone's kind of looking around at each other like, oh, right. And she's like throwing out ridiculous things like, would you like to see newsletters and like monthly get-togethers? And I raised my hand and I said, listen, I was told that I would never amount to anything. I was told that I would be barefoot and pregnant within the first year after I left. I was told that, I'd be lucky if any man ever wanted to be with me. I was lucky if all these things. I said, I am a licensed and practicing attorney. I am not married. I have never been pregnant. I am like doing all the great things that theoretically my parents have always wanted. And the woman looked at me and she said, what do you want, a cookie?
Oh my goodness.
And I said, no, I want an apology. And to his credit, Mike Argyros, who was like later the person in charge of the school, he's the owner's son, but then like the owners, I guess, retired and he took over.
Right.
Mike Argyros, who was there through my entire stay and said some of the nasty things to me, stood up and he said, Jen, honestly and sincerely, I am sorry and I apologize, and you made something of yourself and I am proud of you. And honestly, at that moment, all my resentment went away and it was done for me. It was over. And I am lucky. Not everyone got that. There are people today still waiting for an apology. And I really do believe that if they got that apology, it would help them, because it did. It helped me tremendously.
Kind of hard to do because it's closed down now.
Yeah, but the people are still around, and many of them are willing to give those apologies. To my understanding is that many staff members, if given the opportunity, if not just like, because what a lot of people want to do is just, if they find one of these staff members, they just want to like berate them with all the terrible things they did. And look, I get it. Like they did some terrible things. But if they're given the opportunity, if the people would just stop and say, I'm waiting for the apology and I will stop and listen, many of the staff are willing to give those apologies.
I mean, I definitely reached out to the girls that I felt like I had the most negative influence in and tried to apologize. And most of them, said, oh, I know it was school. It was this. I did have one that told me F you. And, I don't care. Because, I mean, I banged her head against the wall a couple times. But, I do feel like when you can own up to it and you have the apology, it does change things. And there are staff members that have said that they're sorry, and that and they really just said like, this is what saved them, so they didn't do it to be malicious. Now I do believe there were some staff members there that were a little sadistic. I truly do.
Yeah.
But some of these staff members, they said this is what kept them sober and kept their life going, so they were trying to give it to us in the same way that they lived their life. And I can accept that, because it wasn't done in a malicious nature where, they went home at night and were drinking and smoking, coming back. And, this is how they kept their lives in the way it was. I mean, and I truly believe there were some staff members that's what it was. I mean, this was the 90s. Before I went to the family, I had been given electric shock therapy at another place. So this is kind of how treatment was in the 90s, especially towards that time period, as far as I knew. So I don't feel like everybody who ever worked there was a sadistic person and you know, they just wanted to hurt kids. Like I said, I do feel like there's a couple staff members that just took, they really just took joy in watching children suffer or in making you feel uncomfortable around them.
Well, with
Which,
one of the girls that went there, she said something about there was a like a sex pervert who
oh,
she lived in the he lived upstairs from her or something like that. So
Paul lived under above the girls' dorm. Which
oh,
was,
so you know him? Okay, you yeah.
oh yeah, no, I was there. I was there with her at that same time, actually. I know.
Okay.
And he was somebody. I had been molested when I was younger, so men that were abusive or sexually made me skeeve. And when I would look at him, I would just, my whole body would just cringe up. And he would take delight in that and come closer. Now, he never did anything to me, but he definitely took delight in the fact that I did not like to be around him, and he would come closer. And I think Jen feels the same way about that staff member.
Oh, no, you don't have any volume. All right. Oh, what is going on? It must be the phones. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably the phones.
But
It's
okay.
busy time. But
yeah, she, according to what she said that he never did anything to her like you said.
mm-hmm.
But it's just he was creepy.
He was creepy, and one of his things was he would ask people about their masturbation, and he'd ask girls and boys about who their problem was, and it would be brought up at the table around everybody. Do you are you masturbating at night, or if someone was caught, and it would be like, and I know the boys had said as being their sponsor, they had to write down like their fantasies and what they did, and it was very abnormal.
What?
Yeah, and then he always told us a story about how he would masturbate while eating cheeseburgers. And it kind of made everybody not want to eat cheeseburgers.
Right. Uh-oh. Hold on, Jen. You got that high-pitched tone again. Yeah, she sounds like a chipmunk. You sound like a chipmunk. Try one more time.
Yeah, so like I said, I do feel like, there were some staff members that, that was...
Does this work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
What did you do?
I changed the settings.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it was like one hand, stroking, one hand holding a cheeseburger, and the knees were moving the steering wheel. Yeah.
That's the story he would tell that I think everybody remembers to this day.
Yeah.
And yeah, and he would ask people to give their stories about masturbation and who they had their problem with. And it was very unsettling, especially to us growing up. And they always want to know who you had a problem with. And I'm like, I'm 18. Like everybody here's 15 and 16. I have no problems. Like there's no fantasies going on in my head. And they always wanted to know, it was, and even like they had, I had to write down a dishonesty list, and I wrote down and they were like, oh, that's not enough. Like they wanted more so I could show my parents, that I deserved to be there. I'm like, I'm here by court. Like, it doesn't matter whether my parents want me here or not. So some of the things were just ridiculous, but I could see how for the younger kids and for, people who are there, and it's traumatizing. I mean, it's degrading, and it definitely did, pull us down, and they didn't build us back up. But I think what built, us up is kind of just having that relationship with each other and being able to rely on each other. Because, when we came home, we were a mess. Like I said, I failed out of school. I didn't leave my dorm room for 3 months. I left before Jen did. So for about 6 months until they graduated, I was a hot mess. And then once, another group graduated before Jen, and then Jen graduated, I got better because they were out with me. But for those 6 months when I was on my own and I really didn't have anybody to talk to about anything and I didn't relate, it was hard. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing now is that people kind of we're like, oh, forget about the family. I'll never talk about it, never deal with it, never do anything. and now they're having to do that, and it's hard to go into that and go over that all again when you've never had the support all along.
You've had all those years to just build it up and suppress it inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
definitely, I agree. The first few years out were harder. Again, some of that was because of what happened, like the treatment. But some of it was just like a product of being confined. Right. So like it wouldn't have mattered whether we were at the family school or in a jail cell or, you know, in some boarding school, in some like regular boarding school where we weren't allowed to, you know, have contact with the outside world. Like a lot of it was not knowing how to handle situations. We didn't have those situations. Right. Like now talking with my peers now, and, you know, not fully understanding, like, well, what do you mean, like, you brought your boyfriends or girlfriends home to meet your parents, right? Like, I mean, I was sent away at 15. Like, that wasn't an opportunity I had. The first boyfriend my parents met was my husband. Right? Like, you know, and so it just, because we grew up differently, and that was a product of being sent away, but not necessarily of what happened to us while we were sent away. And, you know, but also I think part of my frustration with the narrative that's being portrayed now is this idea, and this is kind of where the split, because there's definitely a split between, you know, former students of the family in all the groups. There's this split, and that split comes down to, do you blame all of your life's problems on the family school, or do you not? And I think that's, I truly believe that's kind of where the split comes down, because I can recognize the things that have happened in my life as a result of things that happened while I was in high school at the family, right? For example, I remember very clearly the conversations I would have with my parents after, as an, you know, in college. I remember like my first job, and I really wanted to quit, and I didn't know how, because I was terrified that they would yell at me. Calling my dad and being like, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to tell them I want to quit because they're going to yell at me. And my dad was like, professionals don't like yell at people. Like, that's not going to happen. You just call them and tell them you're not going to work there anymore. And they may not like you and they may not be happy about it, but they're not going to like scream at you. And I was like, really? And he's like, no, like professionals don't do that. But I was very accustomed to adults screaming at me. Right? Like, that's what happened on a day-to-day basis. I stood at a table in front of a bunch of people and yelled at them. I can correlate, right? I can correlate what things happen in my life that I do associate with what happened to me at the family. Like, I can see the trauma. But there are other things that have happened in my life that have nothing to do with the family, right? That are because of bad choices that I've made, because I'm a human, I'm bad choices, and because, and this is the part many people forget, there was a reason I got sent there in the first place. Like, I was not making the world's best choices to live.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, and this was several years ago now, they are who have.
Okay, you're freezing, Jen. You're freezing up.
Put it out there.
Hold on, Jen. Hold on. You're freezing up.
My battery's dying.
Your battery's dying. Okay.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Is there any way to plug it?
I don't know if
Any way
if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
But I think my battery's dead.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yep.
Can you plug it in? Yeah, we can hear you.
Mhm.
Nope. I think her battery just died. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, you know, like I said, we talk almost weekly, me and her. We're like, we've been friends forever, and, you know, we've had our ups and downs. And I mean, I always say Jen is, you know, very successful in spite of the family, not because of it. I don't give any credit to who she has become because of it. But she's also, you know, like I said, she's also gone through a whole bunch. And like I said, we had each other kind of lean on. And I think maybe that's why we have the group we have on Facebook now. You know, after we had the rash of suicides that did happen, we kind of were like, we need to have a group. We need to have something so that people can at least reach out if they need to.
Right.
Because not saying that it all happened because of what happened at the family, but obviously we have an experience that not too many people can understand. And that was kind of where we started the group from. Marissa, and then John Martin Crawford, and then, you know, before that was Suzanne. Like we had about 3 in a row that kind of started, you know, a big movement for all of us to kind of try to stay together and try to connect with each other.
Right.
And I think that's the one thing I think that we try to take away from that. And, you know, yeah, there have been people that have passed away because of other reasons. You know, one person got murdered, one person, you know, drowned. And I think that sometimes Jen feel, you know, what she was trying to say was that on the list, not all of them were overdoses and suicides. And we need to remember that sometimes, because I think that sometimes gives other people like that hopelessness. Because yeah, there are 100-something kids, and that's a lot of kids, and that's a lot of names. But I mean, we do have to remember, you know, that we're all dealing with our things in different ways. And that's why we made the Facebook group in the first place, so that we all do have a place to go to. And it's not hopeless, and it's not just, you know, people are just killing themselves left and right because of the family.
Right. I was going to say the overdoses and suicides could be something completely different.
Yeah.
From what happened to them at that school. Sure.
I mean, some of my best friends are addicts, and, you know, I met them through the family and through other places, and we all know, you know, how that does, what kind of life that is. And that's an ongoing, continuing thing we have to deal with, whether we went to the family or we didn't. I do think one thing the family did was push a lot of people away from therapy and from help, because they didn't get, like, if that's what therapy and help is, I don't want it. And I mean, I was those people. Like I said, I got sent there. I had a different kind of mindset than a lot of people. I never fell for it. I never felt, you know, that was the way of life for me. It was just something I had to go through and get through. But I think the main takeaway that we want to give to people is that, you know, we have these groups and we have these things to reach out, and it's not hopeless. They're not all these people just, you know, killing themselves, and life isn't just this horrible thing that you have to get over and get through because you went to the family. We went to the family. Yes, stuff happened. There are some people that have absolutely a right to have, you know, horrible grievances against them. And I hope they get their due. I hope they do get some sort of justice. But, you know, we're all here, and we're all here to help each other through it. And, you know, just that, you know, like I said, Jen, you know, she's very successful, and it's in spite of what the family is. Right. I mean, I had my own issues, and I had issues before I went to the family, so I don't attribute it all back there.
You move on and just keep going through life, basically. Yeah.
And you reach out if you need help, you know?
Sure.
I think that's the biggest thing, is it's not helpless. I mean, I know when John Martin Crawford, you know, died, that was a big thing for everybody because he was seen as a big advocate, but he had a lot of issues beyond and regardless of the family. And Jen was really good friends with him, so she wanted to speak to that because she actually was somebody who was in contact with him very regularly. She went to his wedding, she was there. And I think she likes to, you know, She doesn't like the fact that sometimes he's looked at as a martyr, because he wouldn't want to be looked at as a martyr. You know, he's just somebody among us who got to speak, he wanted to empower everybody else to speak their own mind. He didn't want to speak for everybody. He wanted everybody to speak. And I think that's what you're giving us an opportunity to do. And
Yes.
that's great. And we appreciate that. We really do.
Oh, you're welcome. That's what this, I mean, is what this podcast is for. Get on here and get the story out, you know.
Yeah.
So for the most part, uninterrupted. I might throw a question in there, but hey, you know, just that way people can understand. And if they don't agree, well, that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
if they disagree, you know, whatever.
Well, that's what it's about. I think we've kind of went left in society where we think if we don't agree with people, we can't be friends with them. We can't talk to them. I mean, Jen's a lawyer, so hey,
right.
She's all about the disagreement. But I mean,
Sure.
if we can agree, disagree, but at least respect each other and each other's views is to me like what we're missing in a lot of this in the world. And that's what I'm not saying to anybody, oh, your view is wrong. I'm just saying here's an alternative way of looking at it. And, you know, sometimes that helps you get through rather than thinking about all the horrible things. I mean,
right.
and Jen's a historian. She remembers everything. So if I have a memory or something, I'll call her and be like, did this happen this way? And she'll tell me word for word because I can't remember anything.
It's basically just another way of looking at it. You know, some
Mm-hmm.
people have this, you know, have the blinders on. And this is how I remember it. Well, look at it this way. Maybe this might kind of, you know, make it, make your experience maybe not that bad as far as, you know, like what you were saying, you know, they're good times and bad times, you know. So yeah, I see what you're saying about the alternative viewpoint.
Yeah, we didn't want
Definitely.
to invalidate anybody's experience or anything. We're just
And you didn't at all.
Yeah,
So,
that's all. We're just trying to say, you know, that there's a way to be okay with it. We went through it. We did it. It's okay for it just to be an experience in our lives that, you know, it shapes some of our lives for time to time, but it's not going to destroy your life. Like,
right. Now, if you'd went through it and you were, you know, a junkie, you know, after 20 years, it's like, well, maybe the school probably had something to do with it, but that's not the case. So,
yeah.
But anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're going to end it right there. Thank you, Dee, for coming on.
Thank you so much.
We might have to have Jen come on again to tell a little bit more, being that her phone died.
Yeah, she's the historian, so she really knows everything.
Yeah. Maybe next time she have a full battery.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead and thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And like I said, we can do this again if we've missed anything. So hold on to the line there for a second. I want to talk. Let me go ahead and close the podcast out.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody for watching. And once again, I want to thank Dee and Jen, who not here unfortunately, for coming on and telling their story, the alternative viewpoint, which is their viewpoint. So for the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. You take care of yourself, take care of each other. We will see you in the next podcast.